So my patient is a 20-year-old male who was admitted to the hospital 9 days ago after a skiing accident. He presents with an incomplete cervical spinal cord injury. He had an open reduction and internal fixation to stabilize and decompress the fracture site utilizing a right iliac bone graft. He is currently using a Philadelphia collar to help stabilize his neck and to prevent from further injury. His secondary diagnosis include orthostatic hypotension and a stage 1 ulcer on his right heel. He currently has no active contraction below C7 and performs manual muscle tests of biceps at 5 out of 5, wrist extensors 5 out of 5, and triceps at 4 out of 5. He presents with an intact pinprick and light touch bilaterally from C2 all the way down to T4. The patient scored 1 on the functional independence measure for bowel and bladder control. He currently requires maximum assist for functional transfers with the use of a transfer board. He's able to propel his wheelchair 150 feet with minimal assistance, but scored a 4% on the wheelchair skills test due to the needed assistance for locking brakes, removing footrests and armrests, and relieving pressure. The patient is able to long sit and short sit on the mat for 1 minute with the use of bilateral upper extremity for weight-bearing purposes. The patient currently lives with his parents in a split-level home and works part-time as a car mechanic while attending community college working towards a business degree. He is actively engaged in planning a wedding for October. With this in mind, the activity limitation I am going to address is his sitting tolerance. This limitation is keeping the young patient bedridden with no ability to progress towards future goals, such as independent wheelchair mobility and independent transfers, which we will need to do before being discharged home. Although he will not be able to make his return to the classroom until a later time, an increased sitting tolerance will allow for the patient to continue his work at home. The 2 impairments that I am going to address are decreased tricep strength and decreased shoulder stability. I chose to address tricep strength because of his need to bear weight through his upper extremities while sitting and the need for pushing up from surfaces when performing transfers. Along with his triceps, it is important for the patient to increase shoulder stability needed to maintain an upright posture during sitting. If these 2 impairments aren't addressed, he will be restricted in his ability to perform other functional mobility tasks. After checking the patient's blood pressure, I will address shoulder stability by performing rhythmic stabilization patterns for the anterior, posterior, and medial lateral directions. I will perform the rhythmic stabilizations bilaterally for 2 sets of 30 seconds. This will actively engage the patient's shoulder musculature and in turn increase the sitting tolerance in both the long sit and short sit positions. Next, I will address the triceps needed for both upper extremity weight bearing during sitting and for functional transfers. In order to do so, I will have the patient in a long sitting position and instruct the patient to walk his hands towards his feet and back to the long sitting position. This technique of weight shifting will address both triceps and shoulder stabilization to facilitate an increased tolerance for sitting. I will have the patient perform the weight shift 2 times with breaks as needed for decreased endurance purposes.